The learning sponsor for today, basically a year of learning. Sarah Alpert, in memory of her husband, Harav Tzvi Lipa ben Hillel, Bella and David Adler, in memory of her father, Eliyahu ben Yosef Kohen. Friends of Hani Chaifetz, Chana Shoshana bat Yosef. Friends of Jack Prince, Yaakov Yitzchak ben Shmuel Dov. Friends of Sandy Davidoff, Shulamit bat Chaim Eliyahu. Friends of Judy Cohen, Yudit Liba bat Moshe. Friends of Dr. Netza Fransky, Chana bat Ephraim Fisher. Gail and Leslie Kaplan, in memory of their parents, Mushka Sprinzer bat Yosef Chaim Bechava, Hanan ben Moshe Eliezer Bechana, Pesha bat Shmuel Yitzchak Halevi Vitzipora, Isser ben Yom Moshe Cohen Bechana. Friends of Linda Katz, Hinda bat Yehoshua, Lee and Harvey Greenberg, in memory of their parents, Esther bat Eliezer, Yaakov Yosef ben Avraham, Sarah Rivka bat Baruch Yehuda, Batal ben Avraham Alevi. Friends of Rochelle Ebner, Rachel bat Moshe. Ike and Evelyn Blachor, in memory of his sister, Dr. Phyllis Pacheco, Liv Shabbat Isser, Steve and Arlene Greenberg, in memory of his father, Chaim ben Shmuel Halevi. A month of learning by Haran and Mel Haller, in memory of her mother, Malka Rachel bat Yehuda Lane. Tova and Leo Ori Zimmer, in memory of her mother, Henya bat Reb Beryl, and her father, Aaron ben Yosef Mordechai. Judith and Michael Poretsky, in memory of her father, Yaakov Yitzchak ben Hirsch Feivel. Perry and Jill Meltzer, in memory of his sister, Golda Leah bat David Halevi, and his mother, Malka bat Baruch B. Pizer, in memory of her husband, Rav Yisrael Chaim ben David. Ira Grobard, in memory of his father, Shmuel Isaac ben Zev Yekutiel. Stephanie Gold and Fred Mortman, in memory of Jacqueline Santis Lepere, sister Bruce Deutsch. The students of Rabbi Yisrael Leib Ed Kurtzer, in appreciation of 17 years of dedication, is Maggid Shir of Daf Yomi. We have a week of learning by Carol and Josh Sanborn, in memory of her father, Yoshua Shia ben Moshe Yehuda HaKohen. And today, being the 19th, we have a day of learning by Gary and Toby Greenstein, in memory of his mother, Enya Rachel bat Shlomo. And we also include a wish for Refuah Shlema to those who Rabbi Yasker mentioned today in the Misha Berach for the Pitzuim. Okay. All right. Good morning. Welcome back. Thank you. Okay. Okay. You have enough seat? Yeah. Okay. Okay. Samech Dalet Amud Aleph is where we left off yesterday, about 5 lines down from the top. Okay. Just to quickly, right, about there. Batar the Avuke Bay is where we finished up, where we saw the story of Eliyahu and the young man who grabbed hold of his idol, okay, and who's bloated, and the fulfillment of the pasuk that it indicated that that they would nafal, right, that they would fall on their yilulim, on those items. Okay, so that's sort of right, and that was what the Gemara pointed out to us. V'natati pigrechem al pigrei gelulechem. It was giving the story to clarify and present, okay, a fulfillment of that pasuk. Okay, so that's where we left off yesterday. Batar da avuke bay, after he became attached to it. Okay, so we're going to start with the Mishnah, okay, which starts again with the pasuk, all right, and then from that pasuk we will proceed. Okay, so I want to just point out that as we continue in the Gemara today, again, we're still going to, okay, going to still deal with issues of idolatry, and in particular, okay, what we're going to have is the issue of some detail as to what Molech worship was, and to what degree was, and I think just a suggestion that the Gemara, or at least some of the Chachamim, may have had a question in their mind, since we already saw in the Mishnah, correct, that Molech worship was separate, referred to separately from Avodah Zarah. Okay, at least that Tana was implying that there was a question whether this form of Molech worship was a form of Avodah Zarah or not. Okay, and and I'm suggesting that, given the example that the Tana gave, that could be a valid reason why the Gemara goes into more detail under the circumstances as to what was going on, what was the format of Malach worship, because we've already pointed out that there are a number of psukim that refer to bowing as an indication of the fact, okay, that there was different formats of worship, okay, and whether this behaviors associated with Malach worship would be considered valid forms of idol worship. Yeah, go ahead, Michael.
We saw that components of bringing a korban were considered individual acts of avodah zarah and to get nisa. The worship of Moloch had also multiple components, and the machlekes is going to be you do one but not the other of those components. Still
okay. Okay, so we saw clearly that, just to finish that up, that clearly the idea of slaughtering or burning or libations, things like that, were all considered valid formats, standard formats of worship. We also suggested that may have reflected the patterns in the Beis HaMikdash. But in any case, okay, we're going to see this detail presented with the Molech, okay? All right, so the pasuks, we're going to start off, as I said, it's about 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 lines from the top of Samach Daled. Tashma, listen to the following Braita. Vayizaku b'kol gadol el Hashem, Elohehem. Okay, Mai Amur, asks the Gemara. What is this Braita and the citing of this pasuk that they called out with loud voice? What were they saying? What was this? Was this really... Okay, Amar Rav Yehuda, this is Rav Yehuda, V'itema Rabbi Yonatan, and others say it was Rabbi Yonatan. Bye, whoa, whoa. Hainu de achrive leveta. This is the reason that the temple was destroyed. Okay, V'kalya lehechale, and that the hechal was burned. Ukatlinu letzadike, and the righteous were killed. V'eglinhu Yisrael ba'araihu, and the Jewish people were exiled from their land. Okay, va'adayan hu merked, okay, beinam. Okay, and still, I'm going to say the word it at the point. Okay, and now we could understand the it here as either avodah zarah. Okay, there's one it was the yetzer hara that led to avodah zarah, and either, okay, that it still dances among us, that it still influences the people. Okay, so the Gemara picks up. Okay, klum yahav te lam. Okay, there's don't we get the situation elele kablule be agra. Okay, so what was the reason that, in a sense, it was given to us so that we might receive a reward for basically overcoming the Yetzer Hara? Okay, lo, says the Gemara, ihu ba'inan, we don't need it. In other words, we don't need the Yetzer Hara. Velo igre ba'inan, and we don't need the reward for overcoming it. Batar da aviku be, says the Gemara. No, this is because it occurs, we're talking about after it became attached to the people. So what happens? We now have the following story, coming back now to the example of the sages. Yatvu Tzlat Yome B'Ta'anit. They sat for 3 days fasting. Ba'u Rachme, they prayed for Hashem's mercy. Okay, Nafal Laho Pitka Merikia, and a slip of paper fell from heaven, Dahava Kativba Emet, and written on this piece of paper was the word Emet. Okay, now this could be seen as either the seal or the signet, depending on the translations of the Kadosh Baruch Hu. By the way, for those that are familiar with some universities, that actually became the seal of Brandeis University. Okay, right? So what happens? Dahava Kativ Ba'emet. Amar Rabbi Chanina, this is Rabbi Chanina, Shma Mina Chotmo Shel HaKadosh Baruch Hu Emet. From this we learn that the seal or the signet, okay, of the Kadosh Baruch Hu is the term Emet. Okay, now it happens. Now, says the Gemara, continuing, Nafak Keguria Denura Mi Beit Kadshe HaKadoshim. There leaped out or came out a young fiery lion cub from the Kodshe Kadoshim. Okay, when the temple was right. Amar Laho, and it was said to them by Navi Yisrael, a prophet. We're referring here to Zechariah, okay, basically, who was part of the Anshe Knesset Hagdolah. Second, right? Hainu Yetzra da Avodah Zarah. That is the inclination for Avodah Zarah. Okay, that the lion symbolized it. Okay, so what happens? Bahade, the kataf sele, okay, when they try to capture it or grab it, ish tamit binta mine, a sort of a hair came off it, all right? Va'azal kale ba'arba mea parse, and the roar, the sound, the voice of the animal could be heard for 400 parsecs. Amru, they said, Hechina Avid, what shall we do? Dilma Mishmaya Merachme Ale, perhaps heaven will have mercy on it. Amarle, Navis, again, the prophet system. Shadyuhu Beduda Da'avda, okay, Da'avra, put it, stick it inside a cauldron of lead, because V'kasyuha ba'avra, and cover it with a lead covering, the shayif kale, in order to absorb its voice, its sound. Dichtiv, why? Because we have a pasuk that says, Vayomer zot harsha'a, vayeshlech ata el toch ha'efa, vayishlach et ha'evan ha'oferet al piha. Okay, the implication being from the pasuk that the lead is going to absorb the sound of the animal.
Says it's
Right? Okay. All right. So what happens? Amre o il ve'et ratzon hu. Okay. Since we say this is an opportune time, okay, what happens? Nevai rachme yitzra da avera. Okay. Let us also then use this time to pray for Hashem's mercy regarding the sin of inappropriate sexual activity. Ba'u rachme, they prayed for mercy. Imsar biyadayu, the Yetzer Hara for that avera, okay, was put into their hands. What did they do? Chavshuhu, okay, they tied it up. Tzlat yome, for 3 days. Okay, what happened though during those 3 days? Ibahu bi'ata bat yoma. They were searching for a newly laid egg. Okay, lecholeh, for somebody who was sick. Velo ashkachu, and they did not find it. Okay. Okay.
because the Yetzirah for Bia was
Right.
born, so the chickens
Right. So the
lay
chickens
eggs.
didn't lay eggs. Okay. Amru hechina avi. What shall we do? Okay, this is a gadata, but the message there. Nivaye palga. Let us, shall we pray and ask for half? Palga marakia lo yahave. Hashem, the Kadosh Baruch Hu, doesn't only give halves. Okay, what happens? Kitalinhu le'ene. So what they did, they blinded one of its eyes. Okay, ahani be de lo igre inshe bekrovote. And the result of doing so was such that they were rewarded by the fact that people then were not enticed to have sexual relations with relatives.
Right, but that's a possibility to see her sister unflat.
Okay.
So by blinding it, they reduce the Sahara from
Okay.
family
Right.
relation.
Amar Rav Yehuda says Rav Yehuda Amar Rav in the name of Rav. Okay, and now we're going to get again another story. Remember, we've pointed out that the stories aren't just stam legadata. Usually, it comes to try to reinforce a halacha or an act or a statement or a pasuk, things like that. Okay, Amar Rav Yehuda Amar Rav. Maaseh ben Achrit echad. There was a situation with a Gentile woman, shaita chola bioter, that was extremely sick. Amra, and she said, in this case, Im ta'amod hahi isha michuya, if this particular woman, namely herself, okay, survives the illness, telech v'ta'avod lechol avodah zarah ba'olam. Okay, she will go and she will worship, she will serve all sorts of idol worship in the world. What happened, says the Gemara? Amda va'avda l'chol avodah zarah ba'olam. She went and proceeded to worship. She improved and went to serve the various forms of idol. Kevan shehegia lepaor, when she reached the location where they worship Paor, okay, sha'ala lekomrim, she asked its attendants, its priests, right, b'meh ovdim lazo, how is worship to be done for this deity? Amrula, they told her, ochlin tardin b'shotin shechar, that you eat beets and you drink beer, okay? And then what happens? Umatrizin befaneha, and then you defecate in front of the deity. Okay? Amra, she says, mutav shetachzor hahu isha lecholea velo ta'avod avodah zarah becha. Better that I return to being sick than have to observe worship in this way. Exactly. Okay? I
Agree. The current most people are saying that person. The way the Gemara always talks about that
right?
fellow.
You don't refer to your
It could be al yiftach on people's thoughts on, so you don't say it's your situation, it's their situation.
situation, right? Okay, good. Thank everybody for coming. Atem Beit Yisrael, Einam, okay, but the Jewish people are not like that. Why? We have a pasuk that says as follows, okay, Hanitzmadin leBaal Peor, those who are attached to Baal Peor, Kitsamid Patil, they are like a cover that's firmly attached. Vatem, but on the other hand, we have a pasuk that says Vatem hadvekim bashem elokechem. Okay, that you are strongly attached to the Kadosh Baruch Hu. Okay, we're going to get to that in a second. How is that dvekim, that they are close attached? Okay, kishteit marot hadvukot zobozo, like two dates that are attached one to another. Just as a quick aside, but remember this pasuk later on in aspects of Kabbalah take a great deal of significance because dveikut becomes an important concept in Kabbalah and especially later in Musar literature, particularly by Moshe Chaim Luzzatto. Okay? Okay, so what happens here? B'matnita Tana. And we have this taught in a Mishnah. Hanitzmadim laba'al po'or, samid ayedei isha. Okay, those that are attached to Baal Pa'or. Okay, what do we say here? It is like a bracelet that is on the arm of a woman. Va'atem advikim b'Hashem Elokechem, as far as that pasuk goes, devukim mamash, that they are really strongly attached. Okay, we go on now. Tanu Rabbanan, a new bright. Okay,
That we are more
that we
more
our
attached
attachment.
than
In other words,
bracelet.
nitzmadim
Are
is
very loose.
okay is a loose attachment because a bracelet.
This is the reverse of
Okay,
yoke.
whereas dvekim, okay,
Strongly.
strongly. Okay, all right. So Tanu Rabbanan. Okay, we have another story in the Braita. Maaseh besachta ben Elan sheheshchich chamuro v'machrich achad. Okay, okay. So we have an individual named Savta ben Elam and Ben Elas. Okay, all right. So what did he do? He hired out his donkey to a Gentile woman. And the story now tells us, Kevan shehigia lePaor, when they reached the location of Paor worship, Amra lo, she said to him, Hamten ad she'ekanes ve'etzei, wait for me till I go in and come out. Lachar sheyatzah, after she exited, Amar la, he said to her, Af at hamtini ad she'ekanes ve'etzei, so you wait for me till I go in and come out. Okay? Amrah lo, she said to him, Velo Yehudiata, aren't you a Jew? In other words, okay? Amar la, he said to her, Umay ichpat lech, what difference does it make to you? Nichnas pa'ar b'fanav, okay, he entered, the pa'ar deity was before him, okay, and he did his business. And after he did his business there, supposedly, Bikinach bechotmo. Okay, he took snot, so to speak, and threw it at the.
His self on the nose of the island.
I don't know. Okay. Vahayu misharte avodah zara mikalsin lo. The servants of the Paor God, okay, they say, Meolam lo haya adam sha'avdu lazo b'chach. They praised him, okay, but they praised him because not only did he theoretically defecate there, but he wiped whatever. And in other words, now the implication seems to be that his second act was more to be a negative, okay, more negative attitude towards the deity, according to some of Farshim, but nevertheless, they saw it as a positive act. Okay.
Could have praised him sarcastically.
Right. Okay. So the Gemara, right, continues now. Hapoer atzmo lebal poer, one who defecates himself to Baal poer. Harei ze avodato. Okay. In other words, any kind of act of that variety is a form of worship for the Baal poer. Afal gav de mechivin lebezuye, even though it may be that his act was done as an act of disparaging the deity. Okay, let's go on then, says the Gemara.
Yeah. Was this
Hazore.
done before they prayed, or was it after that? When the Jew did this, was it after the?
I wasn't there, so
That's
I
how they.
You weren't there. I have friends who were
With
there.
the non-verbal.
Okay. All right. Remember, by the way, we said that the question always came up if there was a maaseh, if there was a deed involved in the worship. Okay, so here,
I mean, that's called.
all right, that indeed is a deed. Okay, all right. So what happens? All right. So Hazorek Evan. Let's go on. Hazorek Evan the Markilus. We said that was throwing a stone at a image of Mercury. Okay. Zohi avodato. That is its format of worship. Afalgav de mechavein lemur agme. Even though it was his intent to stone it. Okay? In other words, you might think that that way you were trying to show negative. Nevertheless, that was considered a valid format of worship to that deity. Okay? Rav Menashe hava ka'azil lebe. Okay, Turta. Rav Menashe traveled and went to a location, Bev Turta. Amrulo, and they said to him, okay, Avodah Zarah, he dekai hacha. There's a great deal of Avodah Zarah in that location. So what did he do? Okay, Shakal Pisa, he took a clod of earth, Shada Bay, and he threw it at the deity. Okay, so what happens? Okay, Amrulo, Markulis he. Okay, that is, you were throwing it at Marcellus, and because you threw something, not necessarily a stone, but something else, they considered that a form, again, of worship. Okay, Amar Laho, he said to them, Hazorek Evan Lamarculus Tanan. But we have learned that, according to our understanding, it was only throwing stones at the deity. Okay, what happens? Ata Sha'al Be Midrasha. They came and asked the question in the base Midrash. Amarle, and they said to him, Hazorek Evan B'Markulis Tnan. Yes, indeed, we have taught that throwing a stone to Mercury is what is taught. Af al gav de mechavem lemir gameh, even though we said that it was an attempt to stone the deity to show something negative. Amar Laho.
He was butter then. He didn't do
Okay,
anything
well,
wrong.
we'll see. Amar Laho, they said to him, Izil Ashkile, I'm going to go and I'll take that the clod of earth back. Okay, I'll take it back. Amar le echad denot la, ve'echad hanot na. Doesn't make a difference whether you take it or you take it back or put it there. Chayav, you are considered liable. Okay, kol chada v'chada, rav verte. Okay, each and every one. Okay, where there's space allowed for another one to come, shavik. Okay, that's the point. In other words, by removing it, it's just allowing additional space to somebody else to throw something or put something there. Okay, and that's the case. Okay, we're going to pick up now with a new Mishnah on Samach Dalid, about 3/4 of the way down the Amud. Okay, and I just want to start it by pointing out, remember, we have a pasuk in Vayikra, chapter 18, that says, Umizaracha lo titem laha'avir lemolech. Okay, we need to keep that pasuk in mind as we now start the new Mishnah. Okay? Says our Mishnah, Hanotain mizaro lemolech, one who delivers, I'm going to use the word for the moment, his progeny to Molech. Eino chayav ad sheyimsor lemolech, until he hands it over to Molech. And we're going to have a question of what does that mean, hand it over, okay? Via avir ba'esh, and passes the child through the fire. Masar lemolech, says our Mishnah, if the child has been handed over to Molech, velo ha'avir ba'esh, but they did not pass it through the fire. Ha'avir ba'esh, the child was passed through the fire. Velo masar lemolech, but not handed over to Molech. And again, hold on a second. I kicked off Zoom for a moment. Okay, we'll continue in a second. I got kicked off the Zoom. It happens. Velo ha'avir ba'esh, ha'avir ba'esh velo masar lemolech. The infant, the child, was passed through the fire, but not handed over to, excuse me, delivered to Molech. Eino chayav, they are not considered liable. Ad sheyimsor lemolech via avir ba'esh, until they are delivered over or handed over to Malach. And again, I point out, we'll see what the issue is, and pass through the fire.
Is passing through the fire literal?
Let's watch what the Gemara says, and then you'll see what your question, if there's gives an answer to your question. Okay, Katani, we teaching Avodah Zarah, Ukatani Molech, namely our Mishnah. Going back at it, remember, gave both of these statements. By stating about Molech, it seemed to imply that the Tana of our Mishnah, did he not consider that Avodah Zarah, or did he consider it something else? Okay, that's the question of the Gemara. So Amar Rabbi Avin, says Rabbi Avin, Tznan, we learn in a Mishnah, Kimanda Amar Molech Lav Avodah Zarah. That seems to imply that the Tana of our Mishnah holds similar to someone else who implies that Molech is not necessarily a form of Avodah Zarah. The Tanya, as we learn elsewhere in the Braita, Echad leMolech, ve'echad l'shar Avodah Zarah. One in terms of Molech, and one in terms of other formats of Avodah Zarah, Chayav. Okay, so the question there is, are we accepting Molech as a format of Avodah Zarah, or could it be a format of something else, like sorcery or witchcraft? Okay? Rabbi Elazar Rabbi Shimon says as follows: Lemolech chayav. Okay, doing that act would mean one is liable in terms of molech behavior. Shelo lemolech, if not for molech patur, then they would be exempt. Amar Abaye, says Abaye, the following: Rabbi Elazar Rabbi Shimon, Rabbi Chanina ben Antigonus. The two of them amru davar echad. They say the same thing. Rabbi Elazar Rabbi Shimon hada amran. Rabbi Elazar Rabbi Shimon, as we have said. Rabbi Chanina ben Antigonus, the Tanya who taught Rabbi Chanina ben Antigonus in a Braita, says, V'pnei ma tafsat Torah lashon molech. Why was it that the Torah then gives us a specific pasuk that deals with molech? And we cited that pasuk just before. Okay, kol shehem lichuhu alehem. Those who take it on themselves as a ruler. In other words, they assume that there's some authority to that deity. Afilu tzror va'afilu kesam. Yes, regardless of whether it's a pebble or even some sort of a twig. In other words, it's an act. It's an act that says it's as if you are accepting the authority of that object. Okay, whatever. Okay,
It's the word melech.
right. That's what's found in the word melech. Right. Thank you. Rava Amar. Okay, what is it? Molech Ari Ika Beinayu. The difference of whether there is a ruler and there's some authority is the difference between them. And we'll go now to the top of the new Amud. Amar Rabbi Yanai, says Rabbi Yanai, Eino Chayav Ad Sheyim Serenu Lemishortei Avodah Zarah. Okay, that the person would not be liable until they actually deliver the child into the hands of the attendants, I'll call them for the moment, okay, of Sensino has a fancy word, acolytes, okay, acolytes, right? Right? Shenamar, as it says, and now there's our pasuk, umizaracha lo titain. Okay, what does that mean? Lahavir la molech, to pass the child to Molech. Now, Tanya nami hachi, and we have a Braita that teaches this as well. Yachol ha'avir v'lo masar yehe chayav. We might thought it's possible that one can transfer, but not necessarily hand over the child, and therefore still be liable? Question mark. Talmud Loma. Okay? Talmud Lomar, what is this teaching us? Lo titain, okay? Not to give. Masar lemolech, if he's delivered to Molech, lo ha'avir, yechol yehe chayav. But if he's given over to the servants, let's use that of Molech, okay, and he does not, they don't pass through the fire, maybe would that be a situation that the person would be liable? Talmud Lomar, our pasuk says, la ha'avir, to pass the child through, implying the fire. Masar v'ha'avir, shelo lemolech. What happens if the person the parent hands the child over, okay, and they pass, but it's not to Molech. Yechol yehe chayav. Under those circumstances, would we consider the person liable? Talmud Lomar leMolech. Here we say clearly it is for Molech. Okay, going on. Masar v'ha'avir leMolech. What happens then? Says the Gemara. If they hand the child over, they pass the child for Molech, velo ba'esh, but they don't do it through fire. Yachol yehe chayav. Would we say then that the individual is liable? Ne'emar kan lahavir. It says here to pass the child through. V'ne'emar lahalan. And it says elsewhere, lo yimatzei b'cha ma'avir bano ubito ba'esh. Okay, that one may not pass their child, okay, son or daughter, through fire. Malahalan ba'esh. The same way in this case we refer to fire. Afkan ba'esh. So here too, with regards to Malach worship or Malach activity, we have fire. Makan Malach, and where here we're talking about Malach, Aflahalan Malach. So there too, they must be referring to Malach. Now, yes, Ted. Yefesha Kivanta. Okay, good question, Ted. Let's see if the Gemara again is going to come back and give us an answer, because that may very well give us some insight, okay, into the whole situation. Okay. Exactly. So what happens? Afla Halan Molech. Amar Rav Acha Berei de Rava, he says, He'evir kol zaro, if he were to transfer all of his progeny, patur, he would be exempt. Okay, so that adds to your question too. All right, Shnei as it says, because the pasuk says mizar acha, from. So that doesn't mean all; it means among. Right? Velo kol zaracha, and not all of your progeny. Ba'i Rav Ashi. And so Rav Ashi asks the following: He'aviru suma mahu. What if it was a blind person? Okay, all right. Yashan mahu, somebody sleeping. Okay, Ben beno u ben bito mahu. His grandson or his granddaughter. What is it? Okay, and the Gemara tells us tifshot miha chada. At least explain or answer one of them. The Tanya, as we see from the following Braita, ki mizaro natan lamalech. Why? Because from his progeny he gave it to Malach. Ma Talmud Lomar. What is it trying to teach us? Lafi shene amar lo yimatzei b'cha ma'avir bano ubito ba'esh. Why? Because we have a pasuk that specifically says, okay, you should not be among those who pass their son or daughter through the fire. Ainli ela bano ubito. This pasuk would seem to imply that it must be referring to his son or his daughter. Ben bano ben bito minayin. How do we know that if it's his grandson or granddaughter, what is the situation? Talmud Lomar, our pasuk says, betito mizaro. when he gives from his progeny. Okay, okay, which would imply them. Okay, in other words, do we begin with his progeny and conclude with the children's progeny? We'll see. Tana. Okay, what happens, says the Gemara? We are taught. Patach b'chi mizaro. It begins with starting with his progeny. Visalik, and concludes b'tito mizaro, giving from his progeny. Okay, so that would imply that the answer is could be liable for doing it with grandchildren as well. Okay, right, we go on now. Drasha acharinahu. And there is another drasha, another homiletic expounding. Zaro, okay, when he say his progeny, ainli ella zera kasher. That implies only that it's got to be a appropriate progeny. Zera pasul minayin. What do we mean if we say it is non-appropriate progeny? Okay, let's say that. What might we define that? Somebody born from a inappropriate, either incestuous or inappropriate relationship, etc., etc. Talmud Lomar betito mizaro. The pasuk says, from his giving of his progeny. Okay, we move on now. Sorry. Amar Rav Yehuda, says Rav Yehuda, Eino chayav ad avirenu derech ha'avara. He is not to be considered liable or guilty until he passes him through, I'm going to say, in the normal manner. Okay? Now, again, that does not answer Ted's question of are we talking about the parent doing it, or are we talking about one of the attendants? Okay.
The attendant does the passing.
Well, we'll see. We'll see. Okay. Hey, Chidami, what are we talking about here? Amar Abai, says Abai. Okay. Namely the following. Sharga delivne b'matzeh. That there was, I'm going to call it a column of bricks in the center. Nora mehai gisa, v'nora mehai gisa. And there is fire coming from one side of the pillar and our column, and fire coming from the other side of the pillar or the column. Okay? Rava Amar, Rava gives a different statement. All right? Kimishavarta Depuria. No, we're talking about a situation where there is a huge Purim style leap. In other words, one is leaping over a pit of fire while holding the child. Okay? Tanya Kavate de Rava, and we have a brighter according to Rava. Eino chayav ad avirenu derech avra. Okay, he is not considered liable until he passes over, okay, through the normal method of passing a child.
Why'd you call it Purim stuff?
Because that's what the Gemara says. Okay? Kimishavarta depuria. Right? That's exactly language of the Gemara. Okay? All right, so what happens? Ha'avira beregel patur, passing the child by foot. Okay? In other words, normally how would we hand an infant or a child? By hand. Okay?
No. If he jumps over, it's fine. But if he walks over it,
That's another shot, right? Eino chayav ela al yotzei yirecho, but he is not considered guilty. In other words, using yotzei yirecho by, let's say, moving him through a hip, a lower level kind of movement. Okay? Haketzad, how do we understand this? Bano uvito, his son and his daughter. Chayav, he would be liable. Aviv imo, okay, his father or his mother. Achiv achoto, his brother or his sister. Patur, it would be exempt. He'evir atzmo, if he passed himself over, okay, Patur, he'll be exempt. V'Rebbe Elazar b'Rebbe Shimon mechayev. But Rabbi Eliezer b'Rebbe Shimon finds him liable. Echad lemalech, sorry, ve'echad le'sha'ar avodah zarah. Chayav. Okay, whether it is one doing so for Molech or whether it is doing so for avodah zarah. So we see that there must have been a difference of opinion among the sages as to whether Molech worship or Molech activity was considered an act of avodah zarah or not. Some that want the Tana of our Mishnah implied no, because he'd separated them. This sage says yes.
It seems like people could die. Best how do you survive?
Okay. Right.
Because they don't linger, they move through.
Right.
It's momentarily. Yeah.
What if the guy's jumping over a pit and he doesn't make it?
Well, that we don't know. Right.
Fellow who was the father is the kid who goes
Yeah,
down.
but gotta go through a
So
fire.
yeah, but
Guys
the
carry
father-
them through.
Then they kill the father because he didn't.
Somebody's going through a fire. That's my.
Right.
Somebody could get killed.
There's actually in about a Zara, there's a
They were
this,
especially for
whether the individual passed through the fire is whether it's he literally burns or it's fire on each side and he goes between.
Between it.
like a
That's the
worship.
machlokes in Gemara about it.
Right. Okay. Benny. Okay. Do you remember ever hearing stories in India of individuals who would walk on burning coals?
Yeah.
Right?
In India, they also had another, they used to have
Yeah.
which meant that the widow to the Raja, the king, he lost in battle. She could not be taken by anybody else, but was burned
Uh-huh.
in the fire.
right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
No.
Okay. No, but I'm saying with
It's called-
right. But these concepts did exist. Sorry. Okay. Rabbi Elazar Rabbi Shimon Omer, he says, Lemolech Hayav. If it's done for Molech, one is liable. Shalol Molech, if not done for Molech, Patur would be exempt. Amar Ula says Ula Mai Tama de Rabbi Elazar Rabbi Shimon. What was his reasoning? Amar Kra. He based it on a pasuk. Lo yimatse becha. Okay, you will not find among you becha. Okay, among you ba'atzmecha, yourself. The Rabbanan and the rabbis lo darshe becha. They did not expound that word in that pasuk. Vahatnan, but haven't we learned elsewhere in a Mishnah? Avedato v'avedat aviv, his lost object and the lost object of his father. Shalo kodemet, okay, his takes precedence. Okay, va'amrinan ma'itama, and we say what is the reasoning? Va'amar Rav Yehuda, and Rav Yehuda says amar kra, based on a pasuk. Ephes. Okay? In other words, that ideally there should not be anyone who is in poverty. Shelo kodemet l'shel kol adam. His needs precede those of others. Vahatam me ephes, and there we derive it from the word from nothing, right? Amar Rabbi Yossi b'Rabbi Chanina says shalosh kritot ba'avodah zarah lama. There are three examples. He referenced three examples where karet is recited in terms as a punishment regarding avodah zarah. Why is that? Echad lekedarka, one according to its usual manner. V'echad l'shalo kedarka, one not according to its usual standard manner. V'echad lemalech, and one regarding malech activity. Right? So in other words, that would also again seem to imply this idea that Moloch was not necessarily considered a form of avodah zarah. Uleman amar molech avodah zarahi. However, according to those who did hold that Moloch activity was a kind of avodah zarah, karet b'molech lamali. Why then do we have the punishment of kares associated with Moloch? Namely, lema'avir bano shelo kedarka, that he is transmitting or transferring his child, okay, not in the normal manner. Ulaman da amar migadef avodah zarahi, and according to the one that was Rabbi Akiva, remember, who made the parallel between blasphemy and the idol worship. Okay, what about that? Asks the Gemara. Karet, okay, b'megadef lamali. Why then is there the karet punishment for the blasphemer? L'kedatanya, as taught elsewhere in a Braita. Hakaret tichrot. We have the double lashon there. Hakaret ba'olam hazeh. One has karet in this world, implying that they die prematurely at a younger age. Tikaret la'olam haba, and therefore also applying it to the world to come. Divrei Rabbi Akiva. That's the view of Rabbi Akiva. Amarlo Rabbi Yishmael. V'halo kfar ne'amar. There's already a pasuk that says v'nichrata. Okay, in that case, v'chi shlosha olamim yesh. So we have that third example of the word karet. What about that? Ella, rather v'nichrata ba'olam hazeh, that they are in a sense cut off in this world. Hakaret le'olam haba, and then the second time that they in the world to come, tichrot. Okay, dibra Torah kilashon b'nei adam, according to Rabbi Yishmael, and the third time the double lashon simply as a form of communication that is common among people. Okay, and that's where we'll stop. Where tomorrow we'll start with a new Mishnah on Samachet.
This is very exciting for me.
What, Malach worship?
Yes, just the concept of when people do avodah zarah,